They told you no. They turned you away. They closed the door in your face, and in that moment, it felt as if the world had collapsed. Your chest tightened, your thoughts spiraled, and you convinced yourself that this rejection was proof of your inadequacy. And yet, if you look deeper, if you silence the noise of your bruised ego, you will discover a truth so staggering that it will reframe your entire experience. Rejection is not the end. It is not the moment that defines your failure. It is the very beginning of transformation. The beginning of redirection. The beginning of becoming. Think for a moment about the lives of those who achieved greatness. Do you imagine their path was paved with open arms and endless applause? Or do you think they met resistance, doubt, and dismissal at every turn? History whispers to us a pattern. Every extraordinary destiny was born from rejection. But we rarely see the rejections, the closed doors, the humiliations endured in silence. We only see the final triumph. And so when rejection comes to us, we believe it is final, when in fact, it is simply an invitation to step onto a path we could not have seen otherwise. Rejection hurts because it collides with the image we carry of ourselves and the world. We expect approval, we crave recognition, and when it is denied, it feels like an assault on our very identity. But this is an illusion. The rejection you receive is rarely about who you are at your core. It is about circumstances, perceptions, and timing. And yet, the ego insists on making it personal, dragging you into despair. To see rejection clearly, you must learn to detach your worth from the judgments of others. What they refuse, what they dismiss, does not define you. It defines only their perspective at that given moment. There is a paradox here, one that psychology and philosophy both illuminate in being rejected. You are freed. Freed from paths that do not belong to you. Freed from entanglements that would stifle you. Freed from illusions that might have imprisoned you had you been accepted. You see, life has a way of redirecting us through rejection. What looks like an ending is, in truth, a hidden form of protection. You may not see it immediately. You may rage against it. But one day, you will look back and realize that the greatest blessings were disguised as rejections. Consider the metaphor of fire. When metal is thrust into fire, it screams with heat, it glows with pain, but through this process, it is shaped into something unbreakable. Rejection is your fire. It burns away illusions, it tests the strength of your character, and it reveals the parts of you that can endure. Without rejection, you would remain soft, complacent, and bound by the approval of others. With rejection, you are hardened into resilience, sharpened into clarity, prepared for something greater. But here is the crucial choice: will you see rejection as the end of the road, or as the beginning of a new one? Most people stop when they are told no. They collapse under the weight of disappointment. They declare themselves defeated. Yet, those who rise above, those who transform rejection into rebirth, they are the ones who discover a power that is unshakable. They do not argue with reality, they accept it, they learn from it, and they use it as fuel to move forward. And so, when life tells you no, do not grieve as if you have lost everything. Instead, ask yourself, what is this rejection trying to reveal? What path is being closed so another can open? If you dare to sit with the discomfort, if you refuse to see rejection as an executioner, but instead as a guide, you will discover that rejection is one of the most profound gifts you will ever receive. Rejection is not the end. It is the spark that ignites your true beginning. You spend your life chasing approval, though most of the time you won't admit it. You shape your words so they sound pleasant, you adjust your posture so you appear confident, you suppress your desires so you seem acceptable. And the truth is, much of what you do, much of how you see yourself, has been quietly dictated by the hope that others will approve of you. But here lies the tragedy. When you allow your worth to be measured by the eyes of others, you hand them the keys to your soul. You allow their fleeting opinions, their insecurities, their biases, to dictate how you feel about yourself. That is why rejection stings so violently. It doesn't just close a door, it exposes the fragile structure of your self-worth. Imagine for a moment that every compliment you ever received, every validation, every nod of approval, suddenly vanished. Who would you be then? Would you still see yourself as valuable? Or would you collapse under the silence? This is the question rejection forces upon you. It asks you to confront the uncomfortable truth. If your identity is built on external approval, then you are building your house on sand, and the storm will always destroy it. The psychology of this is straightforward but profound. The ego, that fragile construct you carry within, thrives on recognition. It wants to be seen, praised, acknowledged. But the ego is insatiable. No matter how much validation you feed it, it will always hunger for more. That is why the approval of others can never be the foundation of a healthy self. It is addictive, it is unstable, and it is ultimately destructive. Jung understood this. He warned us that to be overly identified with the persona, the mask we wear for society, is to live a life of illusion. You may appear to succeed in the eyes of others, but inside you are hollow because your worth is borrowed, not owned. Rejection, then, becomes a brutal but necessary teacher. It forces you to see that your self-worth has been tied to forces outside of you. It compels you to ask, who am I when I am not accepted? What remains when the applause falls silent? And this question, though painful, is liberating. Because once you detach your worth from the approval of others, you become free. No rejection can touch you, no dismissal can break you, no silence can erase you. Philosophically, this is the essence of true strength. The Stoics taught it long before psychology put it into words. Nothing outside of you can diminish your value. Approval is fickle, unstable, ever-changing. Today they praise you, tomorrow they condemn you. If you live by their approval, you will die by their rejection. But if you ground your worth in the undeniable fact of your existence, your being, your inner self, then no external force can sway you. It is not easy to live this way. The hunger for recognition is deep, embedded in the human psyche. But you must train yourself to withdraw from this addiction. Begin small. Notice how often your actions are guided not by inner conviction, but by the imagined gaze of others. Notice how your mood shifts when you are complimented or criticized, and then remind yourself their approval is a reflection of their perspective, not of your essence. It is data, not destiny. The deeper work is to cultivate self-respect, the kind that does not rise or fall with the noise around you. When you act in alignment with your values, when you commit to growth, when you remain honest with yourself, you create a foundation that no rejection can shake. This is the true antidote to pain. Because once you know your worth intrinsically, rejection ceases to be a wound. It becomes feedback, a redirection, nothing more. So the next time rejection comes, do not see it as evidence of your lack of value. Instead, see it as an opportunity to free yourself from the chains of external approval. Stand in the silence, feel the sting, and then remember, your worth does not reside in their acceptance. It resides in the undeniable reality of who you are and who you are becoming. When you finally detach your worth from external approval, rejection loses its power. And in that freedom, you discover something far greater than acceptance. You discover yourself. There comes a moment when you are confronted with rejection, and the instinct is to fight it, to resist, to replay it endlessly in your mind as if somehow, through sheer force of thought, you could alter the outcome. But the more you resist, the more it tightens around you. The more you argue with it, the more it consumes your energy. And in that inner struggle, you forget a truth that is as old as wisdom itself. What you resist persists. The rejection is not multiplied by the event itself, but by your refusal to accept it. This is why people collapse under rejection. Not because of the no they received, but because they refuse to let it be what it is. Imagine standing in a raging river, arms outstretched, trying to hold back the current. The water surges, your body shakes, and every second is a battle you cannot win. That is what resistance to rejection feels like. You fight, but the current of reality is stronger. Yet, if you stop fighting, if you allow yourself to flow with the water, the same current that once threatened to drown you begins to carry you forward. That is the paradox of acceptance. By surrendering, you gain control. Acceptance is not weakness. It is not resignation. It is the courage to look reality in the eye and say, "This is what is." To accept rejection is not to endorse it, but to free yourself from the prison of resentment and self-pity. When you accept, you stop bleeding energy into the past. You reclaim your power because your power has always been tied to the present moment. Psychologically, acceptance shifts the terrain entirely. When you resist rejection, your mind inflates it, turns it into a monster that haunts your thoughts. But when you accept it, the monster shrinks back to its true size, merely an event, one moment among countless others. Jung observed that much of human suffering is not caused by events themselves, but by the refusal to integrate them into our psychic reality. We fragment, we deny, we suppress, and in doing so we remain trapped. Acceptance, however, is the act of integration. It is the acknowledgement that what has happened is part of your story, not the end of it. Philosophically, this is the essence of freedom. The Stoics taught that we cannot control what happens to us, only how we respond. Acceptance is the bridge between pain and wisdom. When you accept rejection, you cease to waste energy on what you cannot alter, and instead, you direct that energy toward growth, toward clarity, toward the next step. But many resist acceptance because they confuse it with passivity. They fear that if they accept, they are somehow surrendering to defeat. The opposite is true. To accept is to see reality clearly, without distortion. And only when you see reality clearly can you act effectively. Refusing to accept is like trying to navigate a map that you have scribbled over with fantasies and false hopes. Acceptance is the moment you clear the ink away and see the terrain for what it is. Rejection hurts, yes, but acceptance allows you to transmute that pain. Instead of festering inside you, the pain becomes fuel. You can ask, what is this rejection teaching me? Where is it pointing me? How can I grow from this? That is the psychological power of acceptance. It transforms suffering into wisdom. Without acceptance, pain hardens into bitterness. With acceptance, pain softens into understanding. So when the door is shut, when the opportunity slips away, when the relationship crumbles, do not waste your life fighting the inevitable. Stand in the silence, breathe deeply, and allow yourself to accept. It will feel strange at first, almost like defeat. But then you will notice something extraordinary: peace. Not the peace of indifference, but the peace of strength. Acceptance is the turning point where rejection ceases to be a wound and becomes a teacher. The sooner you embrace it, the sooner you liberate yourself from the chains of resistance. There are moments in life when rejection feels like betrayal, as though fate itself has conspired against you. You ask yourself, why me? Why now? You replay the decision, the silence, the turned face, the door that closed, and you convince yourself it was unfair, meaningless, a cruel accident. But what if I told you that rejection is not meaningless at all? What if behind the apparent chaos, there is structure, there is direction, there is guidance you cannot yet perceive? It is not easy to believe this when you are in the depths of disappointment. But often, what you call rejection is life's way of steering you away from paths that would have destroyed you, illusions that would have imprisoned you, relationships that would have diminished you. Think of it this way: you stand at a crossroads. One road looks bright, inviting, filled with promise. You move toward it with open arms, but suddenly, a gate falls shut. You bang on it, you plead, but it will not open. You curse the injustice. What you cannot see is that, far down that road, hidden beyond the horizon, lies ruin. You are being spared, not punished. The gate is not a wall. It is a warning. This is the hidden wisdom of rejection. Life, in its mysterious intelligence, closes doors not to deprive you, but to redirect you. What you perceive as denial is often protection. The human mind, in its limited scope, cannot always see the consequences of every path. We fixate on what we want in the moment, blind to the devastation it might bring later. Rejection intervenes. It whispers, not this way, not yet, not here. Psychologically, this is why rejection stirs such turmoil. It confronts the ego's illusion of control. The ego insists it knows what is best, that its desires are unquestionable. When rejection arrives, it shatters that illusion. But rather than viewing this as cruelty, it can be seen as correction. Jung spoke often of the self, the deeper, unconscious totality of who we are, that guides us beyond the conscious ego. Rejection is one of the instruments of that guidance. It forces us to confront the gap between what the ego wants and what the self knows is necessary. Consider the countless stories of individuals whose greatest setbacks became the very foundation of their success. The job they didn't get pushed them into a vocation that revealed their true calling. The relationship that ended made space for a deeper love they could never have imagined. The opportunity lost gave them the hunger to build something greater. Rejection is the thread that quietly weaves a larger pattern, though we often cannot see the design until years later. Philosophically, this is the essence of trust. To accept rejection as guidance requires humility, the willingness to admit you do not know everything about what is best for you. It requires surrender, not passive surrender, but a courageous openness to the possibility that life sees further than you do. And once you cultivate this perspective, rejection ceases to feel like punishment. It becomes a compass. Every no points you closer to the yes that is meant for you. The challenge is to resist the urge to interpret rejection as finality. Do not cling to what has been denied. Instead, ask, what direction am I being pointed toward? What path is opening that I could not see before? This mindset transforms rejection into revelation. Instead of despair, you find curiosity. Instead of defeat, you discover direction. Rejection, then, is not a collapse but a recalibration. It is not an ending but an adjustment. When a door closes, do not waste your life clawing at it. Turn your gaze to the horizon. The path you are meant to walk may already be unfolding beneath your feet. So the next time life denies you, do not cry out as though you have been abandoned. See the denial for what it often is: guidance. Rejection is not life saying you are unworthy. It is life saying you are meant for more than this. There is a kind of pain that lingers after rejection. The kind that gnaws at you in the quiet moments, whispering doubts about who you are and what you are capable of. It wakes you at night. It follows you in the day. It shapes your thoughts like a shadow that won't let go. And in those moments, the temptation is to see pain as the enemy, to numb it, suppress it, or bury it so deep that you never have to feel it again. But this is the great mistake. Pain is not your enemy. Pain is the raw material of transformation. It is the fire that burns away illusions, the weight that strengthens your spirit, the trial that forges your true self. Imagine the seed buried in darkness. It must split open, it must rupture, it must endure the violence of growth before it ever sees the light. The breaking is painful, but without the breaking, there is no becoming. In the same way, your rejection, your heartbreak, your failure, these are the ruptures that carry the potential for rebirth. The very thing you dread most, if you embrace it, can become the source of your greatest strength. Psychologically, we know this to be true. Resilience is not born in comfort, it is born in adversity. A life without rejection, without hardship, would leave you fragile, untested, dependent on external conditions to remain favorable. But when you confront pain, when you allow yourself to feel it fully, and then choose to rise from it, you carve new pathways in the psyche. Pain forces you to confront parts of yourself you might otherwise ignore. It exposes weaknesses, yes, but it also reveals hidden reserves of strength you never knew you had. Jung often spoke of individuation, the process of becoming whole. And wholeness is never achieved without integrating suffering. To run from pain is to remain divided, trapped in an incomplete self. But to face pain, to hold it, to wrestle with it, is to awaken the deeper self that waits within. Rejection, then, becomes not just a test but a catalyst. It forces you to grow into what you were always meant to be. Philosophically, think of the blacksmith's forge. The metal is heated, struck, shaped by repeated blows. Each strike seems destructive, yet it is precisely through those blows that the sword is formed. The hammer is not your enemy. The fire is not your punishment. They are the very tools that give you form, edge, and strength. So too with rejection and pain. What feels like destruction is often construction in disguise. But here is the challenge: most people do not transform their pain, they transmit it. They lash out, they sink into bitterness, they allow rejection to harden them into cynicism. The invitation, however, is different. Instead of transmitting pain outward, transform it inward. Ask yourself, how can this rejection refine me? How can this pain clarify my vision? How can this disappointment teach me resilience? By shifting the question, you shift the outcome. Every time you transform pain into growth, you rob rejection of its sting, you reclaim your agency. You prove to yourself that what was meant to weaken you has, in fact, made you stronger. This is not abstract philosophy. It is survival, it is evolution, it is how you move from being at the mercy of life to becoming a master of it. So when rejection burns you, do not run from the fire. Step into it with courage. Let it burn away your illusions, let it purify your intentions. Let it awaken the strength that lies dormant within. Pain is not punishment, pain is passage, and in the end, you will discover something extraordinary. The same rejection that once broke you becomes the very reason you rise unbreakable. There comes a point when rejection no longer feels like death, but like initiation. The first time it happens, it tears you apart. The second time, it rattles you, but you recover more quickly. By the 10th time, you no longer tremble, you no longer collapse, because something inside you has changed. You have built strength where once there was fragility. This is the secret hidden inside rejection. It forges an unshakable spirit. And the paradox is this: you cannot reach such strength without first being broken. Imagine a warrior stepping into battle for the first time. His hands shake, his breath is shallow, his mind races with doubt. But with every confrontation, every wound, every scar, he grows steadier. He learns to trust his body, his instincts, his will. Rejection is the battle of the soul. Each time you face it, each time you endure it, you become less afraid. The fear that once dictated your every move begins to dissolve, and in its place, a new kind of power emerges, the power of someone who is no longer controlled by the terror of disapproval. This is not mere resilience. This is transformation. When you reach the point where rejection no longer destabilizes you, you discover a freedom most people never touch. You are no longer enslaved to the fragile pursuit of being liked, accepted, or validated. You move through life on your own terms. Psychologically, this is liberation from dependency. The ego, once desperate for affirmation, is now disciplined, trained, no longer reactive. Jung described individuation as the process of becoming whole, and wholeness cannot be achieved without learning to stand alone. Rejection, repeated and endured, gives you this gift. Philosophically, think of the mountain climber. The first ascent is agony. The altitude crushes the lungs. The path feels impossible. But the very act of enduring strengthens the body. Muscles form, stamina builds, lungs expand. With each climb, what was once unbearable becomes natural. Rejection functions the same way. The first no wounds you. The 10th no steals you. And by the time you've climbed high enough, rejection no longer feels like a fall. It feels like air, simply part of the climb. The danger lies in misunderstanding this strength. It is not the cold hardness of apathy, not the indifference of someone who no longer cares. True strength is not the absence of feeling, but the presence of courage. It is the ability to feel the sting of rejection fully and yet not be defined by it. To care, but not be destroyed. To desire, but not to cling. This balance creates a rare kind of human being, one who is deeply alive, yet utterly unshaken by denial. And once you reach this place, rejection no longer threatens you. You can take risks others shy away from. You can pursue dreams others abandon. Because the worst that can happen, the no, the dismissal, the failure, has already lost its power over you. Fear evaporates, and with it, the chains that once bound your potential. So when rejection comes, as it always will, embrace it as your training ground. Let it toughen your spirit, let it sharpen your resolve, let it sculpt you into someone who is no longer fragile but unshakable. Because in truth, the strongest people you will ever meet are not those who avoided rejection, but those who faced it, endured it, and emerged untouchable. Rejection is not the enemy. Rejection is the weight you lift, the fire you endure, the storm you withstand, until at last you discover nothing outside you can break what has been made unbreakable within.